Well, this has been a fun exercise, hasn't it?
Hi, Jason.
Let me get my ears on. And we're going to learn all about what just happened in our program today. So, yeah, I've switched over to the studio instead. And so we won't be live in the mangroves per se, but we will be learning all about how this is supposed to work today. And so, once again, give me some kind of reaction. Let me know that you can see and hear me okay.
Yep, now we can.
All right, excellent. Whew. Well, no pressure, right? Thank you all for your patience and sticking with me in this. And let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what just happened in my program here called Meet Me in the Mangroves. Once again, my name is Jason, and this is the slide deck for today. I think I put it into the chat as well, so I'll leave this up for a second. So if you want to scan that, I'll put it up at the end as well so you can get it again. And you might want to skip ahead if you're watching the recording, right? Because this session is being recorded, and if you don't want your name and face to be noticed, go ahead and change that now while that's being set up for us. And I'm coming to you from a place called Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium. Now, type into the chat, let me know if anyone's ever been here before, give me some kind of reaction. We're down here in Sarasota, Florida. And we're not only a marine research lab, we're also a public aquarium. Open 365 days of the year. And we have about 38 research programs and centers at the lab, of course, focused on the sustainable use and conservation of our ocean. And so let me go ahead and show you here on my map exactly where we're supposed to be tuning in from. Starting out here in space, let's come on down here to Southwest Florida, which is my location. And in particular, we're down here in a place called City Island, right in the heart of Sarasota Bay. And this is a fantastic location to have a marine laboratory, lots of natural resources around us. Here's the overview of the campus. And as it says here, we are sitting on the land of the Seminole tribe of Florida and the Miccosukee, as well as several other lost nations who were good stewards of Tampa Bay's watershed and the Florida Keys for thousands of years before falling victims to the effects of colonialism. So we honor their legacy by protecting their ancestral waterways. And this is an overview of the campus. You see here on the left is the old aquarium, and the building I'm actually speaking to you from is right there in the center. And off in the distance is the Gulf of Mexico. That's New Pass to the right, as well as Sarasota Bay all around us. And the history of our lab actually goes back several decades. In fact, 70 years is what we're celebrating this in 2025. This really remarkable scientist named Dr. Eugenie Clark was one of the first to study living sharks in a serious and systematic way. And she came down to South Florida in the 1950s, 1955, and gave a presentation to the Vanderbilts down in their winter home in Cape Hayes. And they challenged her to start a place where people can learn more about the sea. They said, if we could give you the resources to start a marine lab down here, would you be interested? And of course, she jumped at the chance. And she almost single-handedly founded the lab there. It was a simple beginning, just one location, one building down there, but we've since expanded, as I said, to over 38 different research programs. We have 10 campuses, 6 of them down in the Florida Keys, and the one I'm at is here on City Island. But from those very simple and humble beginnings, we've since expanded. And now we've opened a new facility. I hope you get a chance to come by and visit. It's the new Mote Science Education Aquarium. It's about 10 miles inland over by the interstate, so it's a pretty neat location. All right, anyone recognize this gentleman? Because this is kind of the origin of my start here at Mote. Anyone recognize this guy? There's kind of a visual clue in the background for you there. That's Dr. Robert Ballard, and he started a program called the Jason Project. Now, no affiliation with me, unfortunately. It was named after the Argonaut of myth and legend. And he started a distance learning program called the Jason Project. And here you can see in our auditorium a teacher workshop, but we would bring kids in by the busload. This was in the 90s. And there was no internet back then. In fact, it was all satellite based. And you can see the consoles there from EDS that were used to receive the satellite signals and kind of simulate a control room for the students to come up and interact via email with the Argonauts and scientists. And that was the origin of distance learning at our lab. And we continued that on through the 90s through various demonstration projects. And then we came along with the Technology and Literacy Challenge Fund grant. This was a partnership between our lab, between NASA and our local botanical gardens to bring these video conferencing systems into our local school systems and eventually to schools throughout Florida. And do these interactive STEM-based programs, talking to real subject matter experts from our lab, beaming them directly into the classroom, so some very expensive phone lines called ISDN lines. And we continued that until we got our own dedicated studio. This space here is actually a little closet that he's broadcasting out of, but we are now in this studio space that I'm talking to you out of right now. And we were able to bring this in here and set up an internet-based program once the IP situation got stabilized so that we could connect instead of over expensive phone lines through these IP systems. And that was great because it was a very reliable system. There were a number of manufacturers, Tandberg and Polycom and a bunch of different ones, but they all talked to each other back in the day, and that was great. So it didn't matter what kind of system that you had. Eventually, we moved into a high definition, which was another great leap forward for us, and continue to have these interoperable systems. And here you can kind of see the scenario. I would typically be on the other side of the glass and be the technical director for these programs. And we have an educator in here speaking directly to the students. And that worked out for a number of years. But then something interesting happened around 2007 or so. Mobile phones, right? The iPhone came along, and we started to get the appification of video conferencing. Before, you needed very expensive hardware and equipment in a specific location to make these video calls work. But nowadays, you can have pretty much a video call in your pocket, as I was trying to do out there in the mangroves. And we had Skype and Google Meets. In fact, this is a video picture from when I went to the International Society of Technology and Education conference where they were introducing Google Meets. But unfortunately, it also meant a lot of fragmentation. So Skype doesn't talk to, well, Skype's not around anymore, but Microsoft Teams doesn't talk to Google Meets, doesn't talk to FaceTime, doesn't talk to Zoom. So you had to decide which kind of app you wanted. Now, at that conference, I saw this device, which is kind of the heart of the conversation I want to have today. And this is something called a Padcaster. And it was a neat system because right around this time, too, you ended up getting iPads and other tablet-like devices coming online, and they're basically naked robotic cores, right? They have a lot of functionality built into them, a touch screen, and this clever company called Padcaster figured out that they could put one on top of a tripod and basically make a TV studio in a box. Now, at the early days, back in 2015 and 2010, these were kind of they were kind of asynchronous. They were for recording and not really for live streaming. But it kind of got me thinking about what the possibilities were, because for a number of years, we were based out of the studio like this. We were not actually out in the environment. It was very complicated and difficult to do that. And but this kind of started making me think about what was possible. Now, these little systems are kind of a turnkey package that Padcaster sells. They retail for around $1,500 to $2,300, depending on how you kit them out. That doesn't include the iPad. That's another purchase. You could also use a tablet of another kind, like maybe a Galaxy Tab or something like that. But what else happened? Well, we all encountered the COVID pandemic, right, in 2020. And that was the motivation for one of our local foundations to actually give us the funds that we needed to try this out. And so we purchased the Padcaster system and got an iPad. And here you can see us trying it out, doing some virtual programs from our exhibit space, because now we had no guests, right? You probably witnessed the same thing. But the exhibits, the animals were still there. Could we go out and interact with them? There was no guest experience to interfere with. And so we tried that out, and it worked pretty well. But you can see one of the little shortcomings there. It has this sunscreen that goes around the screen so you can see it outdoors, but I had to clip it back in order to use the front-facing camera. And that was another limitation that I found with this Padcaster and using the iPad outdoors, is you were just limited to the front-facing and rear-facing cameras. So any kind of discussion or interaction that you wanted to do had to be done in camera in this physical environment. So you could hold up pictures of things if you needed to. You could hold up props and models and discuss things, you know, that were nearby, but you can actually demonstrate the video or graphics on screen. So the production values were kind of low for these kinds of mobile systems, but it worked out well enough for the time, and we continued to experiment with it. as I said, you would need the Padcaster system. You could piece it out yourself. You didn't necessarily need to use their system, but you could come up with a similar kind of scenario for about the same price. But they, again, had a nice little package you could buy. And then for our purposes, we used an iPad Pro 11 downstairs that I was trying to connect with, and that retails for about $1,000. And here you can see it in situ in the situation. I'm standing on our floating education platform, which is right outside our doors here. And we continue to experiment with it. But again, limitations were we were stuck using that front-facing and rear-facing camera. We also started to go into our aquarium space right across the street and try to connect from there. And that's another challenge with these mobile systems is connectivity, which is what kind of destroyed my connection today. It's been very reliable, of course, every other time I've done this, but this time, for whatever reason, wasn't working out. So we'll talk a little bit about what you do in those situations in just a moment. But I continued to experiment from the exhibit spaces. In fact, one of the things I found out is that the audio system wasn't so great. And what I ended up getting was this neat little Bluetooth headset, which has some really excellent noise cancellation software built into it. It's made by a company called Blue Parrot, and this is their kind of lower end system. These retail for about $150 to $200. They have more expensive ones if you want those. But they're made for long haul truckers and the very noisy environments of the interstate and those kind of environments. So they have these great systems for getting rid of excess noise. And I've been in very windy situations, very noisy situations outdoors, and had no complaints from my audience when I'm using this system. And here you can see it in action. Again, one of the challenges is I don't want to interfere with the guest experience. Those people are paying to be on site at the aquarium. So one of the ideas I came up with was Good Night Aquarium, where I could take this Padcaster system into the aquarium after hours, have the whole gallery to myself. The students or participants could say goodnight to all the fishies. We could even read bedtime stories together. And there you can see me wearing that Bluetooth headset there. And that worked really well. But again, kind of limited to the front-facing and rear-facing cameras. Now, on the iPad, you could also do this kind of janky little thing where you would swipe up and swipe over and go to a PowerPoint presentation and then start sharing screen within a mobile app. But even as I'm describing that, you can kind of imagine what kind of production that looks like from the user's experience. It's not very clean or clear. Like here, I can just go click, click, and have this nice fade in, fade out. That's the kind of thing I like to bring to my programs because of my background in television, but that really wasn't possible at the time with this. So we had to wait for a few more innovations that I'll share with you today. And again, here you can see my colleague Lauren trying to heft up about 8 pounds of water in a crab, trying to get it close enough to the crab camera so the students could see it. But it was one way of doing a program in situ out in the mangroves, as it were. So as I'm sitting there thinking about this system, I'm looking out my window, and this is what the view looks like from the other side of the building. And what you can see there out in the distance is the backside of the aquarium. And then we have this road here. And in the past, this road used to flood terribly during our summer thunderstorm season. It would have water ponding on it for hours at a time. But the county came along with the state and put in this system of bioswales. And you can see that vegetated ditch there and on the other side of the street. Those bioswales are low impact developments that allow stormwater to go through the roots and the native plants that have been put into the ditch system. They absorb the nutrients, remove the particulate matter before it moves out into the mangroves and into our estuary. And so I thought, wouldn't it be kind of neat if we could take this Padcaster and start at our stormwater retention pond and then take it down the sidewalk. So in the upper left, we'd start there in the middle at our stormwater retention pond, walk down the sidewalk, go over to a little boardwalk adjacent to our property here that's run by the county called the Sarasota Baywalk, and then just go out on the boardwalk and talk about the mangroves, ultimately ending out into a little dock there in the estuary, peeping out, and talk about seagrasses and coastal restoration. And so I came up with this rather elaborate proposal that I ultimately ended up submitting to our estuary program, kind of mapping out this pathway that we would take. And I think I had up to 30 stations that I had planned initially to stop and talk about. And it was a pretty ambitious concept in theory, but as we'll see in practice, we had to make some adjustments. And the good news is that it was actually approved. And so this is the aerial view of the building I'm in right now. And you can see the seagrass beds there We have our own dock out into New Pass. It's kind of hard to see in the shadows there, but we do have a floating education platform, which is where I wanted to connect from. But then we go right across the street to that little shell lot, and then it's kind of hard to see, but meandering through these mangroves right here is that boardwalk, and that's ultimately what we decided to do, is try that and have our educators connect directly from that. Now, there's no internet out there, right? There's no Ethernet cables, no Wi-Fi, so we were relying on cellular data to do that, which has its own drawbacks and issues, but it was enough to connect us successfully for these programs. And so we ended up creating what I call the Talks from the Dock, the virtual estuary exploration, and our funding request was approved. So we got the money to enhance our equipment. And then something really amazing happened, which is one of the hangups I had today, actually. But back in 2024, one of the neat things that happened is that Apple released a protocol, an update to their software system that allowed you to connect an external camera to the iPad. That changed everything, because now I wasn't just limited to the front-facing and rear-facing camera of the iPad. I could actually connect with any device that I could connect via USB. And so that opened up a lot of opportunities to get better camera angles and, again, improve the production value. I took this up to the top of the shark habitat, and we could kind of look down into the shark tank, look over to the other side when the aquarium biologists were coming on in. And we did these narrated shark training and feeding sessions that we normally do for the on-site guests, but then started to live stream them as well. And it worked out great. Another innovation that happened last year that improved the overall program was this new series of little tiny webcams that started to come out, things like the Insta360 Link. And this one here, as you see, is an OBSBot Tiny. These are little what we call PTZ or pan tilt zoom cameras. And the neat thing about them is they have some artificial intelligence built into them too. And so they have the ability to lock onto somebody's face and then follow them around. So this one is the old type of pan tilt zoom camera. So I have to do this manually with my hand. But the little tiny webcams that are coming on the market now have this sophisticated software that allowed me to connect it basically to the iPad and then just be able to walk around. And that was a really neat innovation. And these little devices, they range anywhere from $100 to $300. They're made by this company called OBSBot, but there's lots of other ones that offer this as well. And so this has been another huge leap forward in the ability to bring live programming from remote locations. Now, we had an issue though. We've got the grant, we're starting to plan and prepare it. And what happens is Hurricane Milton comes along and hits us pretty hard here on City Island. Or sorry, this was Hurricane Helene. She was offshore for a couple of hours off the coast of Southwest Florida, and of course, continued to move on up and cause additional damage throughout the US. But here, you can see one of the things is that floating education platform, the dock that goes out to it, ended up actually being raised up out of the ground by 3 feet, which was not completely insurmountable with this lightweight padcaster system, but it did prove a challenge. But fortunately, the dock, and that's where I would have been talking to you from today if everything had connected smoothly, was still intact and available. But then what happened right after Helene? We had another storm, right? This was Milton. And this one really did a huge damage. The eye wall actually passed over City Island and Sarasota, and significant flooding and damage occurred throughout the island and throughout our community, and completely blasted out the floating education platform, making it unusable for our purposes for the program. So we had to backtrack and reassess and rethink exactly what we wanted to do. Here's that retention pond, what it looked like after Milton. So if you look in the background, you can see those gates there around the pond. The seawater came up to about halfway up that metal gate. And so this pond was completely covered in salt water. Normally, this is what it looks like. So this was in June last year, full of lilies and other freshwater vegetation. And then after Milton, nothing, dead. So that led us to reassess our plans. So we're going to have to trim down our stations anyways, from those original 30 down to a few less. And in this case, we actually reduced it down to 4. And the neat thing is we, of course, noticed that the Sarasota Baywalk itself remained largely intact. It was not damaged by the storm. And it also already had some interpretive signage right there on the boardwalk. In fact, that was the inspiration for our script and our storyboard, was the information already provided by the Estuary program in the county in this little public park. So we used those as kind of the focal point. And we actually reversed it. Instead of starting at the pond and working our way out to the estuary, we decided to start out in the estuary and work our way into the bioswales. And that worked out pretty well. And in the meantime, we started to order this new equipment and also continued to test it out in our aquarium to see if it worked. And so far, so good. Oh, something else was happening, as I mentioned, that new aquarium. The new aquarium was being built. Here you can see where it looked like earlier in the year, and it's come along quite smooth. In fact, we have opened it, and so available to the public now. But I had my idea of course, doing this grant and taking this system out into the mangroves, but also looking forward into the future, thinking, how could I use this in the new aquarium as well? And so with that in mind, we continued to develop the program. And here you can see we got additional equipment coming along, and it worked out really great. But because of Milton, there was some supply chain issues and some other, the aquarium itself was shut down for about a month. And then we had the holiday season after that. So I was really worried we weren't gonna be able to even fulfill the grant as intended. But fortunately, everything started to come together. And then we had a brand new piece of equipment, which was my last little thing that did not work today for the first time. I'm not entirely sure why. But this is actually the heart of the new system. So earlier I showed you the iPad. That's kind of the brain of the system. And of course the cameras are kind of the eye of the system. But this is a little piece of kit that came along after the grant had been submitted. So I set amendment to it to acquire this piece of electronics to help us out. It's called the OBSBot Talent. And the neat thing about it is this is a little tiny video switcher. It's only about the size of a phone, maybe a little bit bigger. In fact, the operating system underneath it is Android. But the neat thing about it is you can see here that it has 4 video inputs, 2 USB-C webcam inputs, as well as 2 HDMI inputs, which kind of opened up a whole lot of possibilities for, again, increasing the production value of these mobile video conferencing programs. We weren't just limited to the front-facing and rear-facing cameras anymore. We can actually bring in these little tiny pan-tilt zoom webcams for different camera angles and from multiple camera angles. And then I could also bring in my device. In this case, I'm using a laptop to show a keynote presentation. But ultimately, we decided to get a little Mac Mini. Those were brand new, the M4 Mac Minis. And again, be able to share videos and graphics as part of a mobile video conferencing system by using these neat little devices called an OBSBot Talent. There's a couple of these things on the market now. Another manufacturer is called YOLO. So a YOLO box is another one about the same size. And this one in particular is a kind of branded version of another company called Magewell. And you can see they're a little bit expensive, but in the scheme of things, a $1,000 box that got so much potential for offering increased production values is very reasonable compared to some of the more traditional broadcast systems that you would find in a TV studio or even a live streaming system. And here you can see it in action. And so this is what I would have demonstrated to you. Fortunately, I had a backup, I recorded it, but here you can see me switching between different media, and I can actually add, again, 2 HDMI sources. I can pre-record stuff loaded in from the built-in memory or the SD card. And because of this, this unlocked a whole lot of different possibilities for bringing in a variety of multimedia to our program and sharing it with the students in real time. And basically without this, these kind of programs would not be possible. And so we ended up creating a system I called MARVEN, the Mote Aquarium Roving Virtual Estuary Navigator. And here you can see some of the equipment all put together. And we'll go over a few more of the components here in just a moment. But we were able to roll this out successfully and connect with classrooms using MARVEN. And the program we started marketing in February. We called it Estuary Explorations, Meet Us in the Mangroves. And so we created a little promotional video, a curriculum for it, a landing page, and started to get teachers to sign up for it. We partnered with another local organization called Remake Learning Days to kind of kick it off during the Earth Day programming. And this allowed us to connect with classrooms not only here in Sarasota, but virtually all over the world. We had folks tuning in from California, from Canada, and more. And one of the other components that we had for it is our interactive bingo game. And this is something neat that you might want to consider adding to your own programs. It's a rather affordable system called Bingo Baker. And these are live and interactive online bingo games that you can add to a virtual program. Teachers can also print out PDFs if they need to, but as long as they can get access to it, sometimes they're limited by a firewall, the students can then play along, and that kind of maintain focus and help maintain attention, and that worked out pretty good. Another innovation that we had is to invite in some interns from our local technical college, and so we had Ravi and a few others come in to help us, and made this a learning experience not only about the estuaries, but also trying to experiment with this live streaming technology, and continued to train our staff on how to interact and work with this MARVEN system that we had put together. Now, the other challenge with Milton is not only did it put a kibosh on our aquarium for a couple of months, it also interfered with our elevator system in this building. So I had, you might have seen in some of those earlier pictures, a nice, robust, tough tripod system with big fluffy pneumatic tires on it, but I couldn't put that up and down the elevator. So we had to revert to the original Padcaster tripod, which is okay, but it's a little bit lightweight for moving around in the outdoor environment. The tires are kind of hard and don't roll around too well. It's really designed for being indoors. So we had to compromise and use this lighter weight system, which we could lift up and carry, but did not move around in the environment nearly as well as the system we had originally purchased. And we had to do that for a couple of weeks while the elevator was being repaired, but it worked out okay. And then here you can see one of our volunteers also helping out. Because this is in a public space, we invited our volunteers to come in and help us work with anyone who is coming along the boardwalk to go fishing or otherwise interacting in the environment to make sure that they explained what was going on. They're welcome to come through, but just let them know that we were broadcasting to students. And so we had a variety of staff, interns, and volunteers helping us out. And this is kind of what it looked like, some of the slides that we could share with them. So during the program when we were on the boardwalk, of course, we start out with the classic, what is an estuary? A partially enclosed body of water where fresh water from land and mixes with salty seawater from the ocean. And we were also able to share some of the latest resources from the estuary program. They put out an annual report card and explain what it meant and how it gauged the health of the local watershed system, giving it kind of a ABCD system. And glad to report that the water quality conditions here in Sarasota have actually been improving. And we were able to pull real-time data out of their recent report and share that with students. And then, of course, we were in the environment itself, so you never know what's going to come along. And so during one of the programs, we had an osprey resting out there on the boardwalk. We came up to it, and I was able to use the system to record footage of it before we had to move in and it flew away. But then we had that available to the students to then show them and let them know that this just happened. And so that was kind of compelling. One of the other challenges with this system, though, is the audio again, the ears of MARVEN. How does this going to work? The Bluetooth headset works great if you're running solo and it's just by yourself, but what if you have a guest or a host or another educator? So one of the systems I settled on, and there's a variety of technologies available these days with this kind of system, but I used this little Rodecaster Duo, which allowed us to connect some Audio-Technica broadcast stereo headsets that we had already on our supplies. And that worked out really well. And so we came out to the mangroves. We were able to share, time-lapse videos that we had previously recorded, like this one, showing and talking about the tides and the time. Another issue that we had because of the hurricane is, what trash is that? There were tons of debris and garbage still in the mangroves that we could talk to them about. How did it get there? Why is it there? Have them identify some of it. And then we also got to look around for different kinds of creatures that might be in and around the system. Talk about adaptations and habitats, the seagrasses, as well as the different kinds of mangroves. So here we have a juvenile night heron hiding out in the mangroves, and talk about camouflage and why the juveniles look very different from the adults. And of course, part of the motivation for the grant is to talk about the stormwater management and think about, where does the water go? And how typically in systems with no bioswales, the water just flows out directly from the system and leads to pollution in our environment. But through restoration and through the system of bioswales, these planted ditches, we can actually mitigate the effects of it, absorb the nutrients, talk about what nutrients are, and how pollution gets into our environment. And so we moved the system out of the boardwalk and next to our education building. And there you can see the actual bioswales in the distance. So we could talk directly from that system using this MARVEN navigator. And you can see some of the additional components that we put together here. I quickly learned that we needed some kind of sunbrella because it's hot out there. And so that helped keep the electronics cool, as well as our staff in between programs. And this is the cart that I ended up purchasing because, again, the Padcaster tripod was a little bit lightweight for what we needed. And the nice thing about these are those big pneumatic fluffy tires that come from this one. $1,400 for a tripod sounds kind of expensive, but some of these Hollywood level carts can get really expensive. And this was a pretty reasonably priced one. We actually saved a lot of money by getting this one versus some of the other ones that were out there. As you can see, it glides and rolls so smoothly. We were able to move in and up and down and around the dirt path leading up to the boardwalk with no problem. And also able to tighten everything down really well. That was the other important part of these rubber tires, is it helped to avoid things shaking loose. Now, OBSBOT, in addition to that itty bitty tiny cute little pan tilt zoom camera, makes a more robust system that we invested in as well called the Tail Air. And the nice thing about this is it has its own little dedicated remote. So in addition to having the AI features built into it to automatically track and pan and follow people, I could also adjust it on the fly using a remote. And this is what it would have looked like today if I could have connected from there. We had various technical issues this time. And again, the brains of it, instead of using an iPad as we originally started out with, I switched over to a Mac Mini. I'm happy to be an Apple ecosystem person, but a PC would have worked just as well too. And this was connected through a cellular data through a hotspot to the internet. And that worked out locally here pretty well because we have pretty good bandwidth. Can be variable, so you might want to think about that. And whenever available, we could connect via Wi-Fi if we were close enough to our own in-house systems. And so here you can see again, MARVEN set up here. There's the Mac Mini. We've got the Rodecaster, as well as a few other components there. I guess the stomach, if you will, the energy source for all of this was a portable battery pack. I went with EcoFlow, but there are tons of manufacturers for these systems nowadays, and you've probably seen them at your box store or at Walmart. They're really great for camping and when you need to bring power. And this one lasted for about 2 to 3 hours at a time before recharging, and was really great. But here's one of the things I learned, and I demonstrated today. You need to pace yourself with these kind of programs. And this is an acronym I picked up from a great group of AV technology professionals over at officehours.global. Definitely recommend you check that out if you are interested in getting help. They're kind of like my brain trust and help me put this whole scheme together. But one of the things they talk about is having a primary source for your connectivity, having an alternate if you need it, a contingency, and today I went all the way down to E, to emergency, where I connected from the studio. So remember to always pace yourself. My primary one would have been the Mac Mini on MARVEN for doing my connectivity, but I still had that iPad that we had originally purchased in the beginning as my backup. In the worst case scenario, I could have used my iPhone, and I actually tried that this morning. That didn't work, so I fell back down to my final one, the emergency one in the studio. And we had to do that for this grant as well. Sometimes the weather wasn't cooperating, so we went into the studio, and I had recorded some B-roll and simulated a walk through the mangroves, and that worked out well enough. And so here you can see this system in process. Here I'm using the iPad system to connect for a program, and one of the backup things that I typically would do is not only have my iPad connected, or in this case, if I had the Mac Mini, I would use the iPad as the backup. But here I'm using the iPad primarily, and then I have my work cell phone right next to it, and I bring my work cell phone into the Zoom call as a secondary co-host. And so I can use that secondary screen to monitor the chat. And here you can see that Osprey video that I had recorded for the program that one time. And I make my iPhone a co-host to the program. And so if for some reason the iPad were to fall off, I have the iPhone as a backup. And then I can also use that secondary screen to make sure and monitor the quality of the call that I'm sending out, and also use it to monitor the chat. So that's a nice little tip there. Have 2 devices if you're trying to do these mobile video conferencing programs. If you want to see what this looks like, here's our YouTube link. And you can go to youtube.com/MoteMarven to see recordings of what this actually looked like in process. And so we continue to do the estuary explorations live, but again, trying to look forward to the future, to the new aquarium. I started to bring Marvin into new exhibit spaces. Here I'm doing a program about seahorses, rolled it down the street and into our Marine Mammal Center where we had our seahorse exhibits, and there's our old manatee exhibit as well. You can also see that we added a quad screen to it. I was able to bring in a variety of video sources in a very compact system to make that work. And another innovation that we added to it is this little Elgato prompter that you see up here at the top. This is a neat little piece of kit from Elgato. It's about $300. And down there at the bottom is a little LCD screen that reflects into a mirror, and then the camera is behind it. And the nice thing about that is it allows line of sight. So the educator could see and hear the students on a tiny screen, but they could see what they were sending out, and they could see the students through that screen. But as they're looking at the students, they're also maintaining eye contact with the camera that was behind the mirror. And so we continue to broadcast and deliver those programs in April and May, and even into the summer through our virtual summer camps. And this is one of the last broadcasts that we did from the old aquarium before we closed it down and moved over to the new system. And so this is what Marvin kind of looks like in this tripod configuration. And hey, yay, the floating education platform was rebuilt and finished right at the end of the grant. So perfect timing, not really. But most of our focus was on the Estuary program over on the boardwalk anyways. But now we've got this, and that's where I was going to broadcast to you from today, but didn't quite work out. Here's a little summary of what actually ended up happening. We delivered 22 programs with this and reached about 500 teachers and students. We also had some community events and had a number of volunteers helping us out. So overall, we had about over 800 participants in this program. And just a couple of quotes that you can read on the recording if you want. But great feedback from all the participants. And just to finish up our presentation here in the last few moments here, the new Mote Science Education Aquarium opened on October 8th. And here you see me trying to do broadcasts from that using the systems that were acquired during the grant and now transitioning over. We're still doing the broadcasts from the estuary. Those are available on City Island, but now we can also do these broadcasts from Mote Sea. And I had to reconfigure things again, and that's the nice thing about these programs is they're kind of flexible. But I had this leftover mobility cart from a previous grant where we had some laptops stored inside there and a nice secure box. And that ended up being the right height and also nice because I could take the equipment that wasn't bolted down and stow it under there in between programs. And that worked out really well. So this is the latest configuration of Marvin out at Mote Sea. It takes about 10 minutes for me to unlock it and set it up before we're ready to start broadcasting. And people accuse me of being a mobile DJ, but it's actually a mobile live streaming system. And so if you have any questions now, go ahead and type them into the chat. Let me know, or I'll put up my email address again and you can let me know via email if you have any questions. But this is what we ended up doing. And again, kind of a nice demonstration today, although not intended, of pacing yourself during these kinds of live streaming programs and making sure that you've got backup, because again, they can be a little bit fiddly and dangerous if you don't have contingencies for that. So if there's any questions, let me know as we wrap up here at the end. Well, thank you all for your time and attention. I hope you're having a great time at NAI. In the future, what I hope to do is roll Marvin back out onto the education platform and offer some birding opportunities. This is another popular live streaming virtual program that I noticed a lot of folks doing. And right outside our doors is just a plethora of shorebirds and wading birds and waterfowl that come in on a regular basis. So I could get Marvin right down there on the platform. And now I'm trying to look into some telephoto systems working with our Audubon Society to see if I can live stream some pelicans and seagulls and terns and other cool critters for future programming. So stay tuned for that. And thank you. My name again is Jason. If you want to get a hold of me, you can email me at marvin@mote.org or check out our program at mote.org/marvin. And again, I hope you're having a great time at NAI.